The desperate signal. The last light of Corellios Captain Zara Thorne pressed her scaled hand against the cool metal of the observation deck as she watched the last civilian transport ships escape into hyperspace. Below her, the beautiful blue oceans of Corellios still sparkled in the sunlight, but dark smoke columns rose from burning cities along the coastlines. The Nexus Dominion had been methodically destroying her world for 3 weeks now, and today would likely be the end of everything the Corellian people had built over thousands of years. "Captain," called Lieutenant Jackson Reed from behind her, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "The defense grid is down to 12% power. We have maybe 6 hours before they break through completely." Zara turned to face her communications officer, noting how his usually bright yellow skin had faded to a pale amber. Like everyone else on the orbital defense station, Jackson had been working without rest, hoping against hope that somehow they could hold out long enough for a miracle. But miracles, Zara had learned, were rare things in a galaxy where the strong simply took whatever they wanted from the weak. The Corellian civilization had always been peaceful. They were explorers, scientists, and artists who had spent centuries mapping distant nebulae and composing symphonies that could make even the coldest hearts weep. Their weapons were crude and outdated, designed more for mining asteroids than fighting wars. When the Nexus Dominion had arrived with their massive black warships and demanded complete surrender, the Corellians had tried to negotiate, to find some peaceful solution. The response had been the complete destruction of their outer colony worlds. "Any word from the other sectors?" Zara asked, though she already knew the answer from Jackson's expression. "The Vorthan system fell yesterday. The Nexus forces have taken complete control of the manufacturing planets there. And, Captain, we intercepted a transmission from the Dominion Fleet Commander. They're not just conquering these worlds, they're preparing to strip them completely. Every resource, every piece of technology, every living being capable of work will be taken back to Nexus space." Zara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The Nexus Dominion was not content with simple conquest. They were a species that consumed entire civilizations, leaving nothing behind but empty planets and the silence of space. In just 2 months, they had destroyed or enslaved dozens of peaceful worlds, and no one had been able to stop them. The message that changed everything, Dr. Elena Vasquez had been monitoring deep space communications from her research station in the asteroid belt when the signal arrived. As Earth's leading expert in xenolinguistics, she had spent her entire career hoping to make contact with alien civilizations. She had imagined that first contact would be a moment of wonder and discovery, not a desperate cry for help from a dying species. The message was encoded in a mathematical sequence that took her computers 18 hours to decode. When the translation finally appeared on her screen, Elena felt her heart break a little. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of an entire civilization's despair. "To anyone who receives this transmission, we are the Corellian Federation. Our worlds are burning. Our people are dying. The Nexus Dominion has declared war upon all free civilizations in this sector of the galaxy. We have tried to fight, but we are not warriors. We are scientists and artists and teachers. If there is anyone out there who can help us, please respond. We do not know how much longer we can hold out. These may be the last words our species ever speaks to the stars." Elena's hands shook as she read the message again and again. Somewhere out there, billions of intelligent beings were facing extinction, and they had reached out to the universe with the slim hope that someone, anyone, might care enough to help them. She immediately contacted her supervisor at the Global Space Administration, but she knew that a discovery this important would quickly reach the highest levels of Earth's government. The weight of decision President Sarah Chen stood at the window of the Oval Office, looking out at the peaceful gardens, where cherry blossoms were beginning to bloom. It was hard to believe that while Earth enjoyed another beautiful spring day, entire civilizations were being destroyed in the darkness between the stars. The translated alien message lay on her desk, along with reports from every major military and scientific organization on the planet. "The Joint Chiefs are unanimous," said Defense Secretary Robert Martinez, reviewing the documents spread across the coffee table. "We have the technology to reach their location, but we would be going in completely blind. We don't know how many enemy ships we would face, what their weapons are capable of, Or even if these Corellians are telling us the truth about the situation. Secretary of State Jennifer Walsh nodded grimly. The intelligence community is concerned that this could be some kind of trap. What if this Nexus Dominion is the legitimate government in that region, and the Corellians are rebels or terrorists? President Chen turned away from the window and looked at the faces of her advisors. These were smart, careful people who had dedicated their lives to protecting Earth and its people. Their caution was understandable and appropriate. But as she read the alien message again, she could not shake the feeling that this was one of those moments that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. "Dr. Vasquez," she said, addressing the scientist who had first received the signal. "In your professional opinion, does this message seem genuine?" Elena had been quiet during most of the meeting, overwhelmed by being in the presence of such powerful leaders. But when asked directly, she spoke with the conviction of someone who had spent years studying the subtle patterns of communication. "Madam President, I have analyzed every aspect of this transmission, the mathematical encoding, the linguistic patterns, the emotional resonance of the translated text. This is not propaganda or deception. This is a genuine cry for help from people who are facing extinction. And based on the technical specifications included in their message, their technology is actually less advanced than ours. They would have no reason to try to trap us." General Patricia Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, leaned forward in her chair. "Even if they are telling the truth, we are talking about sending our people into a war zone thousands of light years from home. Our space fleet has never been tested in real combat. We could lose everything. And if we do nothing," President Chen said quietly, "we will have to live with the knowledge that we let an entire civilization die when we had the power to save them." The room fell silent. Through the window, a cardinal landed on a branch outside, its bright red feathers brilliant against the green leaves. Life on Earth continued its peaceful rhythm, unaware that humanity was about to make perhaps the most important decision in its history. Preparing for the unknown, Admiral Marcus Kane had commanded Earth's deep space fleet for only 2 years, but he had spent his entire military career preparing for the possibility of combat among the stars. As a young officer, he had studied every space battle in human history, from the first orbital skirmishes around Earth to the mining conflicts in the outer planets. But nothing had prepared him for the reality of leading humanity's first interstellar war. The ships were ready. Earth's newest vessels, equipped with quantum drives that could cross vast distances in days rather than years, armed with weapons that could crack asteroids and shielded with technology that could withstand the radiation of dying stars. But ships were only tools, and wars were won by the people who used them. "How many volunteers do we have?" Marcus asked his aide, Commander Lisa Park, as they walked through the hangar bay of the ESS Endeavour, Earth's most advanced battleship. "More than we can take, sir. Word has gotten out about the mission, and we have applications from every branch of the military. The Space Marines alone have over 3,000 volunteers for the 600 positions available." Marcus paused to watch a group of technicians loading supplies onto a transport ship. These men and women were about to leave Earth behind, possibly forever, to fight for people they had never met on worlds they could not even imagine. It was, he thought, exactly the kind of thing that made him proud to be human. "What about our alien allies?" he asked. "Any response from the other civilizations in our region?" Lisa checked her tablet. "The Centauri Republic has wished us luck but says they cannot spare any ships. The Tau Ceti Federation is still debating whether to acknowledge that aliens exist at all. And the Proxima Colony Council has declared the entire situation to be beyond their jurisdiction." Marcus was not surprised. Humanity had only recently made contact with a few nearby civilizations, and most of them were as cautious and isolationist as Earth had been just a few years ago. The idea of traveling thousands of light years to fight someone else's war seemed insane to species that had spent centuries avoiding conflict. But sometimes, Marcus reflected, insane was exactly what the situation called for. The journey into darkness. The launch ceremony was broadcast across Earth, with billions of people watching. As humanity's greatest ships prepared to venture into the unknown, President Chen gave a speech about courage and compassion, while religious leaders from every faith offered prayers for the safe return of Earth's warriors. But for the men and women aboard the ships, the ceremony felt surreal and distant. Commander. Sarah Mitchell, captain of the destroyer ESS Defiant, stood on her bridge as Earth fell away behind them. She had grown up dreaming of exploring the stars, but she had always imagined discovering new worlds full of wonders, not racing to prevent the extinction of species she had never heard of. Jump coordinates locked in, reported her navigation officer, Lieutenant Tom Chen. Quantum drive is charging to full power. All ships report ready for hyperspace transition, came the voice of Admiral Kane over the fleet communication channel. Remember, people, we are not just representing Earth on this mission. We are representing the idea that decent beings help each other when help is needed. Whatever we find out there, we will face it together. Sarah felt the familiar sensation of the quantum drive engaging, reality seeming to stretch and compress around the ship as it slipped into hyperspace. Through the main viewing screen, the stars became streaks of light, and Earth's solar system vanished behind them. Ahead lay the unknown, and the hope that they would arrive in time to make a difference. In the depths of space, the human fleet raced toward a distant star system, where alien civilizations waited for salvation that they never expected to come. Behind them, Earth continued its peaceful orbit around the sun, unaware that its children were about to prove that sometimes the greatest heroes come from the most unexpected places. The journey would take 5 days. 5 days to prepare for a war unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. 5 days to hope that they would not be too late to save the Corellian people from extinction. And 5 days to wonder if Earth's warriors would be enough to stand against an empire that had already conquered dozens of worlds. But as Admiral Kane often told his officers, sometimes the only thing standing between civilization and chaos was a small group of people willing to do what was right regardless of the cost, and humanity had never been short of people willing to pay that price. When Earth arrived, the battle above Corellios, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Corellian system and immediately knew they were almost too late. The once beautiful blue world was surrounded by massive black ships that looked like metal predators feeding on a wounded animal. Explosions bloomed across the planet's surface as the Nexus Dominion continued their systematic destruction of everything the Corellians had built. Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of the ESS Endeavour, studying the tactical display with growing determination. The enemy fleet was larger than expected, at least 60 ships arranged in a perfect formation around Corellios. Their vessels were sleek and deadly, designed by a species that had clearly spent centuries perfecting the art of conquest. Analysis. Commander Park, Marcus said to his tactical officer. Sir, we are outnumbered 3-1. The Nexus ships appear to be heavily armed and shielded. Their formation suggests they have complete control of the system and are not expecting any resistance. Lisa Park paused, studying the energy readings on her screen. However, their positioning is focused entirely on planetary bombardment. They are not arranged for ship-to-ship combat. Captain Sarah Mitchell's voice crackled over the communication channel from the ESS Defiant. Admiral, we have multiple distress signals coming from the planet's surface. It sounds like there are still Corellian defense forces fighting, but they won't last much longer. Marcus nodded grimly. The situation was desperate, but not hopeless. Throughout human history, smaller forces had defeated larger ones through superior tactics, better coordination, and sheer determination. The Nexus Dominion was about to learn that Earth's warriors brought all three to every fight. All ships, this is Admiral Kane. We are going to hit them fast and hard before they can reorganize. Sarah, take the Defiant and the Destroyer group around their left flank. Target their command ships first. Commander Park, signal the fighter. Squadrons to launch immediately. I want them to create as much confusion as possible while we close the distance. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Human fighters poured out of their carriers like angry wasps, streaking toward the enemy formation at maximum speed. The Nexus ships began to turn, their weapon systems swiveling to track the unexpected threat, but they moved slowly, like giants, awakening from sleep. Tactics. They never expected Major Jessica Rodriguez had grown up in the slums of Mexico City, where survival meant being faster, smarter, and more ruthless than everyone around you. Those skills had served her well in the Space Marines, and they were about to serve her even better in humanity's first interstellar war. "Raptor Squadron, this is Eagle 1, she said into her fighter's communication system as she led her pilots into the heart of the enemy formation. Remember, these aliens have been conquering peaceful civilizations for decades. They expect their enemies to line up and fight fair. We are going to teach them that humans have never believed in fighting fair when innocent lives are at stake." The Nexus ships opened fire with weapons that turned space itself into a deadly web of energy beams and explosive projectiles. But the human fighters did not try to avoid the incoming fire in the traditional sense. Instead, they used the debris from destroyed Corellian ships as cover, weaving between chunks of metal and clouds of wreckage that the enemy weapons could not easily target. "What are they doing?" demanded Nexus Fleet Commander Vactor, watching the tactical display in confusion. "Why are they hiding in debris fields? That is not proper military doctrine." His tactical officer, a scarred veteran of dozens of conquests, was equally puzzled. "Sir, their movement patterns make no sense. They should be forming attack formations and engaging us directly. Instead, they appear to be playing games with us." But Jessica Rodriguez was not playing games. She was implementing a battle strategy that had been refined in the urban warfare of Earth's most dangerous cities. When you are outnumbered and outgunned, you use every advantage the environment provides. You hit hard, disappear, and hit again from a different direction before the enemy knows what happened. Her fighters streaked out of the debris field and launched their missiles point-blank into the side of a Nexus cruiser. The explosions tore through the alien ship's hull, but before the other enemy vessels could respond, the human pilots had vanished back into the wreckage field like ghosts. The Marines who fought like demons, while the fighters created chaos in space. Colonel David Kim was leading the most audacious part of the human battle plan. His Marines were not trying to capture enemy ships or establish control of space. They were doing something the Nexus Dominion had never seen before. They were turning the aliens' own weapons against them. "Remember, people," David said to his Marines as their assault shuttles approached the largest Nexus vessel, "we are not here to hold territory or capture prisoners. We are here to cause maximum damage in minimum time, then get out before they know what hit them." The human shuttles did not approach the enemy ship in the expected manner. Instead of targeting the obvious docking bays or shuttle ports, they used cutting lasers to slice through the hull in unexpected places. Marines poured through the holes in small teams, each group with a specific objective. Sergeant Maria Santos led her squad directly to the ship's power core. While the Nexus crew tried to organize a response to the boarding action, she and her Marines planted explosives that would overload the entire energy system. By the time the aliens realized what was happening, it was already too late. Lieutenant James Mitchell took his team to the ship's communication center. Within minutes, they had not only destroyed the Nexus command and control systems, but they had also downloaded the alien fleet's tactical database. For the first time, humanity would have detailed information about Nexus military capabilities and strategies. "Sir," called Private Jennifer Lee from her position guarding the corridor, "we have incoming Nexus security forces. Looks like they finally figured out where we are." David Kim smiled coldly. The Nexus soldiers were about to learn the difference between conquering peaceful civilizations and fighting people who had been raised on stories of humanity's greatest warriors. "Positions, Marines. Let's show these aliens how Earth's children fight when backed into a corner." The tide turns. The battle that followed became legendary among the species of the galaxy. Within 2 hours, the human fleet had turned what should have been a hopeless situation into a devastating defeat for the Nexus Dominion. Their superior numbers and advanced technology meant nothing when faced with tactics they had never encountered and a determination they could not understand. Commander Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiant, watching as the last Nexus ships retreated into hyperspace. The space around Corellios was filled with the wreckage of alien vessels, but more importantly, it was no longer filled with the sounds of planetary bombardment. "Admiral Kane to all ships," came the voice over the communication channel. "Excellent work, people. The immediate threat to Corellios has been eliminated. Begin search and rescue operations for any surviving Corellian forces. But as Sarah began to coordinate the rescue mission, her communication officer reported something unexpected. Captain, we are receiving transmission from multiple sources, not just from Corellios, but from all over this sector of the galaxy, the Eye. Main screen filled with dozens of alien faces, representing species that Sarah had never seen before. Some looked almost human, while others were so different that she could barely recognize them as intelligent beings. But they all had one thing in common. They were looking at the human fleet with expressions of amazement and hope. A tall, elegant being with silver skin and large eyes stepped forward. Unknown vessels. This is Ambassador Kryn of the Stellar Council. We have been monitoring your battle with the Nexus forces. What you have accomplished here today was thought to be impossible. Are you the species called humans from the world called Earth? Sarah looked at Admiral Kane's image on her communication screen. He nodded, giving her permission to respond. Yes, Ambassador Kryn. We are humans from Earth. We received a distress call from the Corellian people and came to help. The alien ambassador was quiet for a long moment. You traveled thousands of light years to help a species you had never met, to fight an enemy that posed no threat to your own world. Why? The question hung in the air, and Sarah realized that her answer would help define humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. She thought about all the reasons they had come, the debates in the president's office, the moral arguments, the strategic considerations. But in the end, the answer was much simpler than that. Because they asked for help, she said, and because helping people in trouble is what decent beings do. The galaxy awakens. The news of humanity's victory spread through the galactic communication networks faster than light itself. Within days, every civilized species in the region knew about the small fleet from Earth that had done the impossible. They had defeated the Nexus Dominion in open battle. Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had first received the Corellian distress call, found herself coordinating communications between Earth and dozens of alien civilizations. Her linguistics lab had become the center of the most important diplomatic effort in human history. The response has been overwhelming, she reported to President Chen during their daily briefing. The Corellian Federation wants to establish a formal alliance with Earth. The Stellar Council has invited humanity to address their assembly, and at least 15 other species have asked for our help with their own conflicts with the Nexus Dominion. President Chen nodded thoughtfully. A week ago, humanity had been alone in the galaxy, focused on their own problems in their own small corner of space. Now, they were being hailed as liberators and asked to lead a coalition against one of the galaxy's most feared empires. What does Admiral Kane recommend? She asked. He believes we have an opportunity to prevent the Nexus Dominion from destroying any more civilizations, but it would mean committing to a long-term military presence in this region of the galaxy. We would essentially be taking responsibility for protecting dozens of worlds that cannot protect themselves. It was, President Chen realized, exactly the kind of responsibility that came with power. Humanity had proven they could fight and win against galactic empires. Now they had to decide what to do with that capability. Building a new future 6 months. After the Battle of Corellios, Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the observation deck of Starbase Unity, humanity's first permanent installation in alien space. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from a dozen different species docked at the station's various ports. Human engineers worked alongside Corellian scientists to develop new technologies. Nexus prisoners were being helped to integrate into peaceful society by counselors from 3 different worlds. The war against the Nexus Dominion was far from over, but it was no longer a hopeless fight. Every week brought news of another liberated world, another species joining the growing alliance, another victory for the forces of freedom over the forces of conquest. Admiral, said Commander Lisa Park, approaching with a report in her hand, we just received word from Earth. The President has approved construction of 12 new battleships, specifically designed for operations in this sector, and the Global Assembly has voted to establish a permanent Galactic Affairs Department. Marcus smiled. Humanity was adapting to their new role in the galaxy with typical human efficiency and determination. They had not asked to become the leaders of an interstellar coalition, but they had accepted the responsibility with the same courage they had shown in answering that first desperate call for help. Through the station's windows, he could see the blue and green world of Corellios, now safe and rebuilding under the protection of the human fleet. In the distance, stars twinkled with the light of civilizations that would continue to exist because Earth's warriors had decided that doing the right thing was more important than staying safe. It had all started with a message from a dying world and a decision to answer the call. Now humanity stood at the center of a new age in galactic history, proving that sometimes the greatest heroes come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, when the galaxy calls for help, the answer comes from a small blue world where beings still believe that protecting the innocent is worth any price. The age of human leadership among the stars had begun, not through conquest or ambition, but through the simple act of caring enough to help when help was needed most.